up! Get those hands in the air! Contact.
We have suspect contact.
Go! Time to move! Hands in the air!
In the past couple of years, a decade or so, every time you would hear the term tactical being used to describe a video game, a shooter for example, mostly a shooter, you would basically just have a game that has a component where you hide behind cover. That's what tactical sort of started to mean since Gears of War made cover shooting really popular. It wasn't the first game to implement cover shooting. It goes back, well, I don't know exactly how far it goes back. I know that Dune, Frank Herbert's Dune, had it in the early 2000s, and I can assure that that game was not tactical. I may do another show about it one day. But if you really want to see a game that is the epitome, the definition of tactical, you cannot find a better example than SWAT 4. This is one of Irrational Games' last titles before they became the BioShock studio and then stopped being. This is a game where you take the role of a SWAT team leader, though I am getting a bit ahead of myself again. I'm sorry I keep tending to do that. SWAT is a really old series when you break right down to it. The first SWAT was an FMV game. It was meant to showcase police procedures in terms of weapons, in terms of interventions. It's an FMV game from the 90s, from the time when not all FMV games were good. It should have existed. The second one was a real-time tactics game, which actually played, it was kind of nice. The third one was a first-person shooter of sorts, though you mostly gave commands. The actual shooting part wasn't really at the forefront. Oh, and the full name of the series is Police Quest SWAT. Yes, Police Quest. That series of adventure games that were much more realistic in terms of actually giving the player a taste of how police actually operates, what the procedures are, than you would believe a game like that could give you. I mean, they were text parser based games, they were adventure games from the golden age of Sierra, but they weren't Leisure Suit Larry, they weren't Space Quest, they were not parodies, they were hardcore simulators. They were used by the actual police. And SWAT began, well, after its short stint as an FMV game, was also a series meant to highlight realism. A series made to give you an authentic, believable experience of what it is to be a member of SWAT. And SWAT 4 managed to do that with the least amount of cumbersomeness in the entire franchise. Granted, it still had some. If you're a fan of first-person shooters like Rainbow Six Siege, you will not find a game that is as fast in SWAT 4. You will not find a game that is as snappy, as quick, as, well, to a point I would say precise. Yeah, your aiming can be precise, your shooting can be on the mark, but it was a game that where you felt you had a certain amount of weight, and not because it accurately simulated your body, you were just kind of awkward. More awkward than you would be in games released before it, like Half-Life 2 or Half-Life 1 for that matter. But again, this is because the game tried to give you a bit more sense of grounded realism, where you can't bunny hop, you can't even jump at all, actually, which is in certain ways detrimental, though this isn't the kind of game where you can vault over things like in Rainbow Six Siege, because you will most often, well, you would have most often just jumped and fallen flat on your face and died or broke your leg. As a SWAT leader, you would have a lot of ways to play this game. You'd have the career mode, where you would take your team from mission to mission in escalating events where you would be called upon to intervene, to capture offenders, to protect hostages, to extract people. You didn't extract them, you just handcuffed everybody and beat them if they didn't want to surrender. You would shoot people, you would collect evidence, you would bag and tag, and you would do your best to not get anybody killed. You would be scored at the end based on your success rate at not getting anybody killed. If you wanted to get actual top marks, you had to make sure that even the people holding guns, pointing them at you and shooting at you would not be dead at the end. Injured, yeah, not dead. Though the game didn't absolutely penalize you for killing people that wanted to actually murder you. You just wouldn't get 100%. But if you really wanted to fail, well, you could just shoot a hostage or let one of your teammates die. Though you wouldn't actually lose completely if one of your teammates died, you would just have a really big penalty to your score, and depending on the level of difficulty, you could not progress to the next mission until you repeated this one. If that wasn't to your liking, you also had instant action where you would be dumped into a random mission, or you could make your own custom missions based on the existing maps, which you would populate with objectives, with NPCs, hostile ones, non-hostile ones, and different scenarios for what the mission actually entailed. This was not a fast game, as I've said so before. It was slow and methodical. You were expected to go slowly from room to room, using your Opti-1 to look under the door or ordering your NPC teammates to do it for you because you were team leader. You had a control panel from which you could tell them to do basically anything, though they sometimes would just stay in the doorway, not really move, not respawn when you told them to fall in, to do anything. And also they would occasionally throw flashbangs and stingers and all sorts of grenades in your face because they would often miss, or you'd go into a room too early and you'd get flashed in the face. So that's why it was important in this game to be slow and methodical. But there's a bit of a disconnection in the game, and it's not actually a bad one. SWAT 4 is slow. You move slowly, you aim slowly, you do basically every action very, very slowly. Shooting is not one of them. Shooting, getting injured, and dying happen in the blink of an eye. Every bit of the game is a slow build until you find an enemy, a perp. If you go in blindly into a room and didn't check it out beforehand, you're dead. Odds are you will not even have time to fire one shot because you are dead. In this game, damage works something like this. If you got hit in a vital organ like your heart or your head and it didn't have armor, you're dead. You're absolutely irredeemably dead. There is no hit points, there is no health packs, there is no regeneration, you're dead. You could get hit in your hands and your feet and then you would just stumble around even more slowly, aim even more awkwardly, and still be alive. But if someone you didn't saw shot through a doorway with an armor-piercing bullet, a Full Metal Jacket one I mean, and that thing clogged you in the noggin, you will fall flat and lose the mission. And that's something valid for everybody in the game. Everybody can die. A stray bullet shot through a door will kill a hostage. The game actually warns you about that. Though to be honest, it never actually happened for me because I usually just shot doors because doors are evil. But in case you didn't want to take the risk that you would accidentally kill someone, SWAT 4 reminds you that this is a game where you play as the police. Not as 80s America police, not as, well, current America police, but actual police forces. You're not a murder squad. You're not, you know, what you'd find in Syndicate, the old one, I mean. You're a cop. So you do have non-lethal weapons. You have flashbangs, you have stingers that will mostly ricochet and stun you in the face. You have gas. You have a sort of a paintball gun, but it doesn't shoot paintballs, it shoots pellets with pepper spray in them. You also have pepper spray, not necessarily for the enemies, but for the more belligerent civilians that don't want to be handcuffed and taken into the trailers, so they would be safe. You could also punch them in the expansion, which was very, very satisfying. You would have shotguns with beanbags, you would have tasers, and you would have the ability to shout at people. Shouting would sometimes get the enemy to surrender, oftentimes it wouldn't, and sometimes, in rare occasions, they would lift up their hands, attempt to go down to one knee, but instead of dropping their weapon, they would point it right at you and then shoot. So you have to be quick on your feet. It's that disconnection I talked about earlier. You have to be slow, methodical. You actually have to gather evidence you find. You have to collect drugs, weapons, you have to report injured, you have to report people captured, you have to report people downed. You have to take everything you find with you. Well, press F and make sure you logged everything at least. But you're also expected to be really quick when it comes to shooting and aiming. Now, if this doesn't sound like fun, I assure you that it is. It is a deep, rewarding game. Again, kind of slow, a bit cumbersome, but it is very rewarding because you can give your teammates instructions in such a way that you can tactically defuse a situation. You can have them enter through one door, or have one team, because you can split them up in two teams. One of them goes through one door, the other one goes through another door. One of them uses a breach charge, the other one uses a flashbang, you go through somewhere else. It makes it fun, rewarding when a plan comes together. It also had multiplayer, which came in two forms. One of them was co-op. The expansion actually made it possible to play co-op with 10 people. And the expansion had some huge missions, so yeah, having 10 people and one map, that could have been a bit chaotic, but also very fun when you consider you have quite a lot of tools at your disposal, like door wedges to stop enemies from constantly opening doors and running away, explosives, tear gas, flashbangs, the stingers that will sting you in your own face most of the time, and many other tools. But what's actually really great about this game is that it had competitive multiplayer where you would play against other people. Again, in teams, one of you would be the perps, one of you would be the SWAT, and you would have access to different weapons, I believe. Probably. I'm not sure. I think I remember it wrong this time. But the golden bit here is that you could set this game up to only score arrests. Yeah, you could shoot the other players. You could shoot them right in the face. You could spawn kill them because the maps were kind of horribly designed for multiplayer. But you could make this game only score on arrests. So that meant you had to find them, you had to tase them, you had to take them down with a non-lethal measure, you had to punch them in the face even, and then arrest them. And only then you would get 1 point. That takes a lot more effort than just shooting someone. Quite a lot more effort. But it made everything so goddamn fun and frustrating because, you know, the game was kind of cumbersome, and the way that, well, certain weapons reacted wasn't really what you would call great. I mean, the paintball gun that shot pepper spray bullets, balls, things, yeah, that one would mostly pepper spray you in the face if you got too close to the person you pepper sprayed, and they would recover from it sooner because they were under the effect longer, and they would arrest you. It led to some frustrating incidents and many broken friendships, but still, it's a superb game mode, which I'm kinda sad to see isn't really available in a lot of games. The non-lethal methods especially, you don't see these basically anywhere. You don't really see this kind of game, a first-person shooter letting you use non-lethal measures. Well, you may say that, well, Deus Ex had non-lethal measures, but Deus Ex was mostly RPG. Well, to a point. I'm talking just pure FPS, and this was pure FPS. Slow, simulator more, but still FPS. I kind of wanted that Team Saber intervention tactical game to have it, but it didn't, and the game was kind of poor. Kind of wish that Rainbow Six Siege had it. It doesn't. It's just shooting people in the face. Though we do have traps. I like the traps. You mostly don't see non-lethal measures anymore. Or when you do see them, they basically just act like the normal ones, where you just one-hit kill people. Non-lethal measures in this game took work. They took actual effort to use. You had to plan things differently. You had to take into account the fact that, well, the enemy may not surrender after being sprayed in the face 2 times. You have to do it 5 times, 10 times. You have to chase them down and potentially face a hail of bullets before you can cuff them. And it felt so rewarding when you managed to do it. When he pulled things off, especially in multiplayer. A multiplayer, by the way, that doesn't... Well, it still works. The servers used for it were based on GameSpy, so they're offline, but you can still use direct play, I believe. Or you can use several methods like, I believe, Game Ranger still works, I think, or one of them at least. If you want to play SWAT, you can find it right now on GOG for the price of €8 and €9. It's around $9 or €9. This is the last game in the series. There were no others made, even though you'd think that Activision would try and revive it. I mean, it's a shooter. They cannot do that constantly. Irrational Games, they try and make a follow-up. They tried to make a game that was, well, it was SWAT, with SWAT's gameplay, SWAT's mechanics, but with zombies. And mind you, this was before Left 4 Dead. It would have been amazing. It would have been superb, but they didn't go through with it. Instead, they chose to make some other game called BioShock, which no one knows about, right? Well, yeah, we know about BioShock. BioShock's a good game. Infinite, not so much. So if you want to take a look at SWAT 4 and its expansion for yourself, you can find them both on GOG right now for $9 approximately. Just remember, this isn't Rainbow Six Siege. This isn't a game where you rush into combat. This is a game where you draw your weapon and hope to never use it, and where you flashbang yourself in the face more often than in Counter-Strike. Goodbye.